The small corner cafe, tucked between a florist and a bookstore on a busy city street, had always been Emily's sanctuary. It wasn't a grand or fancy place, just a modest establishment with worn wooden tables, a faint aroma of roasted coffee beans, and sunlight streaming through tall, dusty windows that made the dust motes dance like tiny fairies in the air. She knew every regular by name, every order by heart, and took pride in her work, moving deftly between tables with a grace that belied the one arm she had lost in a car accident years ago. Her prosthetic arm, sleek and functional, was more than a tool. It was a part of her identity, a symbol of resilience and determination. On this particular Friday, the cafe was busier than usual, the lunch crowd spilling into the narrow aisles. Emily had just returned a greeting to a regular customer when the bell above the door jingled sharply, announcing the arrival of a group of young men whose energy immediately filled the room in the wrong way. They were loud, brash and self-assured, their presence impossible to ignore. They sauntered to a corner table, their sneakers squeaking against the tiled floor, and threw their jackets on the chairs as if claiming the cafe itself. Their laughter was sharp, obnoxious, and it cut through the normally warm hum of the cafe like broken glass. Emily approached cautiously, greeting them with her usual polite smile, ready to take their orders, but the group's leader leaned back in his chair, eyeing her with a mix of curiosity and malice. "Hey," he sneered. "What happened to your arm?" The question, loaded and cruel, echoed louder than she expected. Emily's smile remained, but the air around them grew tense. She answered politely, trying to keep the conversation professional, but the bullies weren't satisfied with civility. They began mocking her, imitating her movements in exaggerated, childish ways, making jokes that were cruel enough to make other customers glance up from their meals, uncomfortable. Emily felt a familiar knot of frustration tighten in her chest, the old anger rising, the one that reminded her of every time she'd been underestimated, every time people had assumed her disability made her weak. Yet she held her composure, taking the order and moving on, but the group's laughter followed her, louder and more obnoxious than before, echoing through the cafe. The atmosphere, once warm and bustling, had shifted, tension settling like a heavy fog over the room. It was then that the door swung open with a force that made the bell jingle sharply, cutting through the laughter and the chatter. A man stepped inside, moving with a quiet but undeniable authority. Jason Statham. He didn't stride in like a celebrity looking for attention. He moved deliberately, almost predatory, scanning the room with a calm, focused gaze. The young men noticed him immediately, their laughter faltering as if a sudden chill had entered the cafe. Statham's eyes locked onto them, unflinching, and his voice, low and steady, resonated with a strength that made the room hold its collective breath. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. No shouting, no dramatics, just a simple question, but the weight behind it was undeniable. The bullies shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their bravado evaporating under his intense gaze. Customers who had been quietly observing now felt a sense of relief, as if someone had finally brought the unspoken truth of justice into the room. Emily, still holding her order pad, felt a wave of relief and disbelief wash over her. She had faced rude customers before, but never someone who seemed to radiate both authority and an almost protective aura simultaneously. The young men stammered, trying to muster excuses, but their voices faltered, broken by the unyielding presence before them. Statham didn't need to raise a hand. His quiet confidence did all the work. Emily took a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since they had arrived. The cafe seemed to exhale with her, tension melting into a renewed sense of calm. The bullies muttered apologies, but they lacked conviction, their shame palpable. Statham gave them a single measured nod and turned his attention briefly to Emily, who offered a small, grateful smile. He didn't linger, merely offering a word of encouragement before moving on to leave the cafe, but the impact of his presence lingered long after he was gone. Customers returned to their meals, the clatter of cups and low hum of conversation resuming, but the atmosphere was subtly changed. Respect had replaced ridicule, and Emily felt a renewed sense of pride, a reminder that cruelty could be confronted and that allies could appear when least expected. The young men, now sheepish, quietly left the cafe, leaving behind a lesson they would not soon forget. Emily stood behind the counter for a moment longer, watching them disappear, feeling a quiet victory and a strengthened resolve. The incident, brief as it had been, was more than a confrontation. It was a testament to courage, dignity, and the unexpected ways in which human decency could manifest. News of the encounter spread like wildfire, first through the cafe staff, who recounted the story with wide-eyed awe and incredulity, retelling every detail of Emily's calm yet powerful demeanor, the bully's stunned silence, and the sudden, almost cinematic appearance of Jason Statham. Every staff member had their own version of what had happened, each story slightly different, but all shared a common admiration for Emily's poise and Statham's quiet authority. Before long, a customer who had been filming discreetly uploaded the video online, and within hours it went viral, drawing attention not only locally but nationally. People were captivated not just by the bravery and calm resilience Emily had displayed, but by the surreal juxtaposition of an ordinary cafe moment with a figure of cinematic heroism stepping in to restore order, a real-life scene that mirrored the kind of heroics many had only ever seen on a movie screen. The video sparked a wave of empathy and inspiration, prompting thousands of comments, likes, and shares, each person moved by the message of courage, dignity, and the transformative power of human decency. Messages poured in from strangers across the country, with many sharing personal stories of their own struggles against bullying or adversity, finding hope in Emily's unwavering strength. Local businesses sent baskets of coffee and pastries as gestures of appreciation, some leaving handwritten notes of encouragement for Emily, celebrating her as a symbol of perseverance. Even the regular customers, who had always admired her dedication and warmth, went out of their way to offer kind words, hugs, or small tokens of support whenever they came in, making her feel recognized, valued, and respected in a way she had rarely experienced before. Emily, who had grown accustomed to shielding herself from the cruelty or thoughtlessness of others, now felt emboldened by the collective acknowledgement of her strength, as if the invisible weight she had carried for years had been partially lifted. She began to notice small positive changes ripple through the cafe and her daily life. Colleagues offering to help with the heaviest trays without her asking, regular customers checking in more often to see how she was, and even strangers approaching her on the street to share their admiration. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted as well. It became a small hub of warmth and positivity, a space where people consciously reminded one another that respect and kindness mattered, and where acts of cruelty or insensitivity were less likely to go unnoticed or unchallenged. The young men who had caused the initial commotion, once arrogant and dismissive, returned weeks later, not to provoke or ridicule, but to offer hesitant apologies. Their faces betrayed awkwardness and discomfort, their earlier bravado replaced with humility as they recognized the courage Emily had displayed and the weight of their own actions. Witnessing this transformation in them was unexpectedly powerful for Emily, reinforcing the idea that one moment of strength and dignity could create change even in those who had seemed irredeemable. Over time, Emily's own sense of purpose deepened. Her interactions with colleagues became richer, infused with the quiet pride of someone who had endured adversity and emerged stronger, and her approach to serving customers was tinged with an added layer of confidence and calm authority. She began mentoring new staff, quietly teaching them not just the practicalities of cafe work, but the lessons of composure, empathy, and self-respect in the face of disrespect. The cafe, once just a place to work or grab a quick meal, transformed into a symbol of community resilience and human decency. Visitors, whether regulars or newcomers, sensed the warmth and integrity embedded in the space, often remarking on how different it felt from the usual hustle of urban cafes. Emily's prosthetic arm, once a source of unwanted attention and mockery, now stood as a visible testament to resilience, strength, and grace. A reminder that no act of cruelty, no matter how brazen, could ever truly diminish a determined spirit. And with every coffee she poured, every smile she offered, and every conversation she engaged in, Emily silently reaffirmed the truth that quiet heroism, courage, and kindness could arise in the most ordinary of places, leaving a lasting impact not just on those who witnessed it, but on the world at large. Even months later, the viral video continued to inspire, shared in classrooms, workplaces, and community forums as an example of dignity, bravery, and the extraordinary difference one person's calm courage could make. Emily, behind the counter, became more than a waitress. She was a symbol of hope, courage, and the lasting power of kindness.